Thanks for listening to this podcast of Trending with Timmerie. If you haven't already subscribed, please catch us wherever you love to listen to your podcast, from the relevant radio app to Apple, YouTube, you name it, we are there. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to go and give us a 5-star review to help other people discover the podcast. Anything you share in terms of episodes, whether it's texting it to a friend, posting on social media, helps to build up the kingdom for God, to help confront the challenging issues we face as a culture, but with joy, with hope, and with an eternal perspective where our faith collides with everyday life, bringing eternal principles to help us live our life joyfully.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio.
Welcome to our weekly marriage hour today on Trending, and happy feast day of the beloved Irishman, St. Patrick. How this turned into the day of drinking and wearing green underwear, claiming green underwear so that you don't get pinched, I don't know, but I gave you your PSA yesterday that it was St. Patrick's Day, and lo and behold, I wake up and I'm attacked by my sister because I'm not wearing green. You know, my child is clearly my child because she didn't know. She doesn't, of course, she's 14 months. She doesn't know what it means for someone to wear green. But someone said, "Oh, look, your cousin's not wearing green." She tackled her to the ground. I don't think she knew what she was supposed to do, but she pinned my little niece to the ground. Didn't quite get that she was supposed to pinch her, but truly bred well here. Happy feast day of St. Patrick's Day. I cannot wait personally for my little girl to be a little older so that she gets some of the fun kid activities. If you missed yesterday's episode, it's posted online, just that section talking about who St. Patrick is and some of my favorite ways to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, whether you have kids or just fun for the adults, from the foods to the significance of the foods. We'll touch on that a little bit later here on Trending. But hey, it's our weekly marriage hour, and if you have a question, I'd be happy to take it. We've had a lot of questions come in today. The number is 1-888-914-9149. You can also ask your question now on Instagram. But one of the questions we topics we often discuss here during our weekly marriage hour has been the primary role of married people, specifically parents, to educate their children, to really recognize this is what the church is calling us to, and that we're called to step into our role as the primary educators of our children. And so I want to share with you in just a little bit about a loved and trusted program that works with parents to teach the beauty of the Catholic Church's teaching, how to live their Catholic identity, and take advantage of the rich, sacramental, and faith-filled prayer life of the church. This organization talks about how to respond to hot-button issues by how they live their lives, understanding chastity, and how to respond to so many of the difficult topics in our culture, from abortion and the LGBTQ ideology to, again, living a chaste lifestyle. So I'm going to share with you in just a little bit about an incredible Catholic pro-life leadership program for youth that you need to hear about. Coming up during our marriage hour, and again, any question goes, we'd love to hear from you. Dating, marriage, and relationships. Numbers 1-888-914-9149, or you can ask that question now by direct messaging me on Instagram at Timmerie. Just follow me there at Timmerie, Timmerie. And we're going to unpack a really fascinating question one person had today about, okay, I love my job, I love my work, but my husband's asking me to stay home with my kids. I don't want to. I'd never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I don't want to be one now. She says, I make more money than my husband. He's asking me, because this is the thing that God's calling me to do. And how do we answer that question? Well, we'll discuss this a little later today on the show. But joining me now is Catherine Contreras, the founder and president of Vox Vitae, a Catholic pro-life teen leadership camp for teens occurring in Texas and Southern California. They foster a deep and loving understanding of the Catholic faith and equip teenagers to be courageous and active voices for life and confront some of the toughest moral issues of our time. Catherine, welcome to Trending.
Thank you, Timmerie. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
A lot of people are starting to make their summer plans for their kids, planning camps, vacations. And one thing I wanted people to know about is Vox Vitae. Can you share with us a little bit about Vox Vitae, the programs happening, dates and locations, and why you started this work?
Yeah, that's a lot. Okay, the dates, the dates of the camps. The California camp is at Camp Lolek in Wrightwood, California, and that's from June 19th through June 25th. And so it starts on Father's Day with Timmerie will be one of our speakers. Tim Staples, Paul J. Kim, Carlo Broussard, Deacon Steve Greco, and they'll be speaking on Father's Day, and they'll be and then it culminates on Saturday when the parents pick them up. But it's sort of like our Father's Day present to the fathers, like, Happy Father's Day, fathers. You spent the day with us, and now you can leave your teenager with us for the week and then pick them up. And then the Texas camp, Bishop Strickland, he heard about Vox Vitae and he loved it. And so he invited us to come on over. So we'll be going to Tyler, Texas, the week of July 17th through the 22nd. And many of the same speakers will be there as well. Not all of them, but many. And then also we'll be having Abby Johnson. She'll be speaking at the Texas camp. And it was founded by myself, and then in talking with other people, that, you know what, we're losing a lot of our kids and to society, where they're being, the kids, our youth are being bombarded with so many messages that go against our faith, that go against chastity, that tell them to accept all of these things. And these are our poor kids are being bombarded with these unwanted messages that are actually in grave contradiction to the teachings of our church. And so I started this organization, this nonprofit, out of love for our youth, that I've been there. I'll be 52 this month, and I've been in that journey of where we do have our faith, but then we lose our faith. And I didn't have the answers. I didn't have the knowledge to be able to answer those questions when I was having doubts. And then when sometimes we go through events in our life where we do lose our faith, or where we have an incident where we may then in turn become angry at God or Christianity because we don't understand everything. And gosh, I get to work with these amazing kids and experience so many things through them and with them. And it is this challenge, and it's this blessing, and it's exciting and exhausting all at the same time. But it is all with the focus of, for the youth, to raise a culture of life. And these kids are so worth it. And the journey of finding the Catholic faith and rejoicing in the truth and love and wisdom of our Catholic faith, I just pray for everyone to be able to fall in love with her and to be able to stay with her. And that's what we're all about.
That's Vox Vitae. It's a Catholic pro-life youth training program. Part of what I love about what you're doing with Vox Vitae, Catherine, is that you have the youth there learning about, one day about their faith, the next day about pro-life issues, and you can break down the whole week for us in a moment. But what's so profound is every single day, the whole week intertwined, the youth have the opportunity to go to confession every day. They go to adoration daily. They pray the rosary daily together. They attend mass daily. Their faith is being bolstered. They're learning that in order to face this culture that, as you said, they're being bombarded by messages that contradict and undermine their faith and ideas and the teaching of the church, that they're not just learning the truth of the faith, but they're learning how to have faith and be sustained by our Lord Jesus Christ sacramentally, so that they can endure the ridicule and criticisms by family, friends, and strangers when they stand firm in what the church teaches. So tell us a little bit about the topics that are covered and how this pro-life youth training program is structured.
Well, so we structure it with, first it's a kickoff with the family. And so we have, last year we started with our kiddies program. So the little kids from ages 2 through 12, they also can go into some, here's some little talks geared toward talks and activities geared toward their age. So the parents and the teenagers, and they go into, and then they hear others talk, they hear other talks, and that's on Sunday. And the theme of this year is we are all called to be saints. And then, so then that's our family day. And then Monday is Catholicism. Like that's the root and foundation to, actually to our lives. And we know that no matter how much information we can give to anybody, if we are not rooted in and have a relationship with Jesus and Mary, it's going to be a lot harder to do what we're called to do. And so we go we learn Catholic apologetics, where the teens are given a handbook every year, and it's about an inch thick. And the goal is that at that they'll have this handbook as a resource to turn to. So after they go through the 4-year curriculum, coming to camp for 4 years, they go to college or they don't go to college, but they have this handbook of resource and information to turn to. And so then they learn Catholic apologetics. People like Paul J. Kim, Carlo Broussard, Tim Staples, you yourself, these incredible speakers, Dr. Stacy Trasancos, coming in and speaking and being the speakers are experts and leaders in their field, and they impart their knowledge. And every single day, the kids have an opportunity to ask questions. You know, mom and dad, they're wonderful and they're working hard and they're raising their kids, but they're not going to have the answers to everything. And you know what? With Vox Vitae, mom and dad don't have to know everything. We bring in the experts that will be able to answer those questions for the kids, and the kids have a safe environment to be able to ask mom and dad, to ask the experts about these questions. And then, so then that's Monday. And then Tuesday is pro-life 101. How does abortion affect a woman? What are abortion methods? What is fetal development? How are aborted babies used in research? There's a lot of information that people don't know, and that we want to help, like, if you're going to have a position, like we know, like this is an issue that people are talking about, let's be informed. Let's just not go with this way. Let's know what we're talking about. And so the kids, our youth, are given this information, and then it culminates with a pro-life debate, which is amazing. If anyone's ever wanted to see how passionate the youth are about pro-life, come and watch the debate. These kids are so good. And then Wednesday is Your Life Matters. We desperately want to help the precious youth understand how much their own personal lives and their dignity, that they are precious, they're made in the image of God. And so I share my testimony with them. Pam Stenzel, she comes in and she talks with them. Jim O'Day talks with them. And you are also there and you talk with them. And the kids, again, have a Q&A. Like every single day, they're able to learn about different things. How pornography harms their bodies. How hormones are coursing through their bodies. And just because we feel a certain way doesn't mean that it is an indicator that we should have an action that corresponds with our feeling. It's a feeling. It doesn't mean you should do it. And then Thursday is our Your Voice Matters. So many people are pro-life, but if we look at social media, how many pro-life people even click like on a pro-life post? How many people vote pro-life? How many people even post about or share a pro-life message? And so that's our motto with Vox Vitae, is be a voice for life. We've got to use our voices. I have this one story of one of our teenagers. She's trained in one of our programs after camp. It's called Help and Hope, and it's a sidewalk advocacy program where people are trained on how to be a sidewalk advocate. And there are a lot of people out there doing amazing sidewalk advocacy work. And this is to help people who are not trained or are not experienced, but also like a supplement to help people who have been out there. And so this, one of our teens, she and her father, they are a team and they're trained, and she used her voice and she used her training. And she was able to talk with, a woman who was seeking abortion and, and she talked with her outside of a Planned Parenthood. And now this young lady and her baby daddy, they're now planning to be married, and now there's a healthy baby boy alive and safe because this teenager learned how to use her voice. Another example is in California. I know Relevant Radio is everywhere, but in California, we were facing a bill a few years ago where the legislature was trying to force our dear Catholic priests to divulge what they hear in confessions. And we know that will never happen. So our teenagers were calling me and sending me messages and saying, hey, Miss Catherine, what we learned at camp about calling our politicians, can we do that about this bill? Can we call them? And these precious kids, they were applying what they learned at camp. How do you research a politician? How do you even know what they've sponsored or what they've co-sponsored? Or how do you even, what's their name? Do you even know who they are? And how do you talk to a politician? And so they applied that not just for pro-life, but also to defend our dear priests. And then the last day, Friday, we take them out and we pray outside of an abortion facility, and we hold posters and we pray, and it's incredibly moving. And then at the end of the evening, every day we have fun, games, talent show, a concert. That's a little bit about Vox Vitae Camp.
Oh, Catherine, I'm so glad that you're sharing about how effective these young people are. And even the story you just shared of one of the alum of the program who she went on to sidewalk counsel in front of the abortion clinic. A teenager. How old was she, Catherine?
15.
15 years old. She interceded in front of the abortion clinic. She helped convince someone to keep their baby and help support them. And now they're getting ready to be married. I mean, this is incredible. These young voices, they are the future of the church. They are the future of the pro-life movement. And this is why I wanted you to hear about this program, Vox Vitae. That's Vox, Vox Vitae, Vitae.org. I'll include links in the podcast notes for today's show, but we'll also post them now on social media so that you can grab that link if you are looking for something for your teenager to do this summer. What better thing to do than work with a trusted program that helps to equip and educate and love your children so that they can love their faith, love their bodies, respect their bodies, and help teach others to do so. Last summer, I was at the program with my mom, my baby girl. My mom was helping to watch my little girl. And, we're there in the thick of LA. There are, 100 kids there, speakers such as our regular guests here on Trending, from Michael Gasparo, sharing his own testimony and talking about the clinical side as a therapist of same-sex attraction and gender dysphoria, to Jim O'Day talking about pornography. And we're all there. My mom's looking, she's watching these kids. And she said, at the same time as my heart is just breaking as I look at these kids because I know what they're up against, it is so cool to see how well equipped they are. They need this more than they realize, but they do realize, because even with all of the restrictions last year with COVID and masks and indoor gatherings, the program ended up having to occur outside. And as the program was outside in 100-degree weather, 100 teenagers,
100-degree weather,
we had their undivided attention, and they were listening, and they wanted to be there, and they'd have an opportunity for Q&A, and they wouldn't stop asking questions because they were tired and hot. They would ask and ask for an hour, 2 hours, because they care, because they're struggling to respond, because they're struggling in their own lives. Catherine, it's incredible what you are doing here in the program. So how can people get involved? Where's the information? And again, can you share with us about those dates for the program?
Yes. Please go to the website, Vox Vitae, VoxVitae.org. Just click on where it says camps, and then you'll be able to see the teen camps. And then if you click on an overview of the camp, you'll see, like, it's right there on our website, all the names of the talks and the speakers our precious youth are going to be listening to and learning from, and the incredible speakers that will be there. Plus, there's a lot of adults out there who say, you know what, I sure wish I had that when I was young, or I wish my kids had that when they were young. And you know what? We have kids that they would love to be able to come to camp. If you could sponsor a kid, please sponsor a kid. Kids want to be able to come. So please sponsor a kid. And also, you'll see on our events page, we have events happening, especially 40 Days for Life. We are active with our Help and Hope Sidewalk Advocacy Program. And so we've got incredible people out there being part of and leading 40 Days for Life campaigns out here in Southern California. Please, even if you're not in Southern California, please get involved in 40 Days for Life and be out there. Be a prayer warrior. The more people that are praying, the more lives that the sidewalk advocates are able to save. We desperately need more prayer warriors out there and people to help us. We've got
That's
kids.
Catherine Contreras. We're going to stop right there. You have to check out voxvitae.org. That's VoxVitae.org. We have also posted links on social media. Sign your kid up this summer, happening in California, in Texas. Learn more at voxvitae.org. I'll be right back during our weekly marriage hour. This hour is sponsored by Solidarity Health Share. Join thousands of members who choose life through ethical and affordable healthcare. Check now to see how much you can save. Go to CatholicHealthShare.com.
Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
It's our weekly marriage hour on Trending, and today we're going to talk about some questions you guys have, really fascinating questions. One of which is, and this is a question that I see many husbands get stuck up on, and I think it's interesting. The question has to do with, will my husband or wife be my spouse? Will we still be together as husband and wife in heaven? Yvette in Sacramento said, hello, my question is, after my husband and I die and if we're in heaven, would we still be together as husband and wife? Shocking answer for many people. No. Okay, so no, you are not together as husband and wife. Will you still have a relationship? Yes, if you are both in heaven. And where we understand this teaching is from Jesus Christ in Matthew chapter 22, when the Sadducees come up to Christ and they're asking him questions and trying to trick him. Now, by the way, little fun fact, if you can't tell the difference between the Sadducees and the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the joke goes, they're sad because they don't believe in the resurrection. The Pharisees, then it's an easy guess, are the ones who are very hung up on the law. So the Sadducees come, they're sad, they don't have the resurrection, they don't believe in it, and they come and they're trying to test Jesus about the resurrection, the whole idea of the resurrection. And they say, teacher, Moses said if a man dies having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. So he's appealing to the Jewish, the Israel ancient tradition of a brother, if he's unmarried, marrying his dead brother's spouse. And then they go on to say, now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, and having no children left his wife to his brother. So too the second and third, down to the 7th. After them all, the woman died. They said, in this resurrection, therefore, to which of the 7 will she be wife? For they all had her. So the question is, this woman had 7 husbands. Let's say they all end up in heaven. Whose wife is she? To which Jesus Christ gives an answer that for many is tough to swallow. He said, you are wrong, because you know neither the scripture nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage. So what that means is there is no marriage in heaven. There are no new marriages, and the marriages that were experienced on earth are not bonds that are structured in heaven. The structure of heaven doesn't include marital relationships. And this is built into actually the very vows we take at the altar. When we say, till death do us part, that is, our marriage lasts until one of us dies. Now, does that mean that the memory of that individual, the significance of the marriage is obliterated? No. We have to remember a number of things when we dive into the Catholic Church's teaching here. And I think this is a great question, especially to discuss during our weekly marriage hour. Marriage is a bond we experience on earth. Marriage is a vocation. It's one of the vocational sacraments. It's a vocation that is meant to help orient us in our main vocation, and that is to holiness, to living a life so that we might be with our Lord Jesus Christ one day in heaven. And to many, especially husbands, I tend to see that particularly men tend to be hung up on this. They're disturbed by the idea that their wife won't be their wife in heaven. But let's ponder a little bit of what heaven will be like. So you will know your spouse. Whether your spouse makes it to heaven or not, you will know your spouse. But your need and desire for your spouse will be perfected. Your relationship with your spouse will be perfected. You will fully and perfectly understand and know your spouse, and vice versa if they are in heaven. And even all the more so if they're also perhaps in purgatory or if they're in hell. That you will understand and even know why they are not there. And while yes, that's painful to think if your spouse goes to hell and you're in heaven, but you would not be disgruntled over that because you would understand the perfection wisdom of God. And that's hard for us to understand. Why? Well, we're going to touch on that a little bit in a moment. But I think it's important that we ponder for a moment the vocation of marriage. A path toward heaven, preparing us for heaven, for our resurrected bodies, for the beatific vision, for that union with God, and ultimately that union will reveal to us the perfection of our relationships, and they will show those perfected relationships in heaven. The Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 1028 says, talking about heaven, because of his transcendence, God cannot be seen as he is, unless he himself opens up his mystery to man's immediate contemplation and gives him the capacity for it. So what the Catechism is saying is that because of God's transcendence, because of his grandeur, because he's not human, we are finite and he is infinite, because of that, the mystery of God is not something that we can immediately understand. God has to give us the capacity for it. Now, when in heaven, we are going to understand the fullness of God. We are going to be united with him. We are going to experience the beatific vision. But until then, we don't even have the capacity to fully ponder the love of God, the love God has for us, the love we are meant to have for God, the love we are meant to have for other people, even the love God has for those people we can't stand. But even the beauty of the love that God has for those people we love most. We will not fully understand him or the fullness of love and relationships until we are in heaven. We're just getting a glimpse of it. You see a marriage, you think, man, they have such a great marriage. They have great communication skills. That one's so sacrificial. This person's so holy. That doesn't even touch on what a relationship will look like in heaven. So perfect, so pure, so purely understanding one another and loving one another. You see, when we end up in heaven, there will be no marriage. There will be no new marriages. The marriages that occurred on earth will not be bonds that are represented in heaven. But what will occur are the deepest and most profound relationships that we can't even fathom here on earth. You see, the church calls the contemplation of God in heavenly glory the beatific vision. And when the Catechism goes on to talk about this, in the same paragraph we're just referencing, paragraph 1028, talks about how great your glory and happiness will be to be allowed to see God, to be honored with sharing the joy of salvation and eternal light with Christ, your Lord and God. It goes on to talk about how you'll delight in the joy of immortality in the kingdom of heaven with the righteousness and God's friends. It goes on to say, in the glory of heaven, the blessed continue to joyfully to fulfill God's will in the relation to other men. That is by interceding for those on earth, the church militant, before the heavenly throne. And this is so significant for us to ponder for just a moment, because we do not fully understand the mystery of God and the great gift of heaven, that to us the idea of perhaps not having our pets in heaven, or not having our spouse and our marital relationship in heaven, to us that can be difficult to ponder because we don't know the fullness of the mystery of God and the great gift of the beatific vision and the perfection of all relationships. And so to re-answer that question in short form, will you, after you die, if you and your spouse end up in heaven, will you still be together as husband and wife? The answer is no, but you won't even miss it. And isn't that so shocking to hear, that especially for those who've had difficult marriages or good marriages, to understand that's the perfection of heaven. That's what we long for. The perfection we try to force our spouses to show, or we try to practice ourselves, doesn't hold anything to the perfection of heaven and the intention God has for us and our relationships with others. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie here on Relevant Radio. If you have a question during our weekly marriage hour, I'd love to take it. The number is 1-888-914-9149. I think this is so true. Jim Schaefer, my producer here on Trending, just said, I'll just be happy that my wife and all of my children are there, that is in heaven, to be united with Jesus forever. Isn't that a perspective we want? That we're not so much focused on how will I feel, how will I have this relationship, but are my loved ones there? And will they be with him forever? I think that's a really important reminder. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie. Okay, mom question, and this is a really good mom question. It has to do with dealing with their young adult kid and a Vegas trip. Anonymous mom sent this email to me saying, my son will be turning 21 in a few days. And in May, he was invited to go to a bachelor party that is in Vegas with his cousins aged 26 to 30. She said he's never been there, nor has he been on a vacation without his parents. He does not know the details of what the plans are and is uncomfortable asking. She said, my son is very involved in the church. He ushers at the church at his college campus, and he's part of the Knights of Columbus. She said, how involved should I get? I have no problem asking the person in charge of making the plans. My new mom, I'm a rookie mom, my kid's only 14 months old. My mom heart goes out to you, because my immediate reaction is, I personally hate Vegas with a passion. It seems like everyone wants to celebrate a birthday, a bachelor party, there are conferences. There's always something going on in Vegas. The last 3 times I was drugged there for a dance competition for my sister, of course wanting to go and support her. But even just going to restaurants there, it's hard. I mean, I've been handed pornography every single time I'm there. I have, see people so scantily clad. It's horrific. I have actually a terrible story about last time I was in Vegas. I have sworn it off. Please, I pray no one ever sends me there again. If you're a parent and you're concerned about your kid going to Vegas, especially a young man, I get it. And I do not envy you as a parent not wanting your kid to go there. I completely get it. But here's the challenge, and this is where I think we need to dive in a little bit. Your kid's 21 years old. You never stop being a parent. You never stop worrying about them. My hope is that he won't go. I think that you can't really go to Vegas unscathed. Like I said, last time I was there, I was handed pornography. I think that's hard for men and women to see, but especially for men and young men. You end up going to Vegas, and you're scandalized. There's a reason why that phrase, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And I think that a lot of people, when they go to Vegas, you don't plan a trip to Vegas for a bachelor party intending good. I know that there are a lot of great shows. I've seen some incredible shows in Vegas, from Cirque du Soleil to others when I was there with family. Again, I don't want to go back. As great as the shows are, there's so much that is just so harmful for our souls. And so here's the question. What do? You have a 21-year-old son, super involved in the church. He's uncomfortable asking the plans for the bachelor trip. How involved do you get? Well, given that your son is 21 years old, I would hope, and I want to encourage you to empower your son to make the best decision. Now, I think this is important, especially having a 21-year-old. You can share your preference. You can ask him. You could even ask him not to go respectfully. But you don't want to push too hard that you push him into going. But you need to help empower him. And that's hard, especially when, you're 21 and not over-parenting and parenting enough. It's such a tough time to navigate. And I think that what's most important is that your son knows he has freedom, but that you respect him and know he's capable of making a good decision. I think your son needs to know how proud you are of him. Like, you shared with me all these great things about your son, helping at church, being so involved in church. Make sure he knows you're proud of him and that you know that he can make a good decision. But make sure that he knows the difficulty of going to Vegas. That it is scandalizing, that pornography is handed to you, that people are literally, last time I was there, a naked person who was painted was shoving their face and their body in the stroller of my 3-year-old nephew as we were walking through there, because some family wanted to go there for a party. Last couple times I got stuck going, family, always wants to go for some reason or other, because, there's some fun things you can do there, but you can't go unscathed. And so what I want to encourage you to understand as well, and I think this is really important when it comes to male bonding, and when you have a kid, and I even think about this, my husband and I will talk about various things we've chosen not to participate in. And you have FOMO, that fear of missing out. When a bunch of your cousins are going out to do something, it's like, oh man, I want to spend time with them, or a group of friends, but I don't approve of what they're doing. We're bummed when we miss out, but we're all, especially on that quality time and everyone's together, but we're also glad we didn't do what they were doing. And especially for men, I think that, things such as bachelor parties, they can be great times for guys to come together, but they can also be great times for a lot of sin. And so helping your son to understand, it's okay to have that fear of missing out. It's okay to desire to be with all the cousins, but as a mom, reminding your son his call to holiness, reminding him of just some of the scandals of Vegas and usually the intention of Vegas parties. But finally, I know something that has always helped me in, making my own choices as a young adult, and as being a parent now. Whenever there were, difficult opportunities from high school on up, my mom always reminded me what we were called to when we were called to holiness. She said, to be holy means to be set apart. And so sometimes we have to make decisions that set us apart a little bit. And I think if you could impart anything to your son, sometimes doing the right thing can feel a little lonely at times, can feel a little isolated, but your soul is happier for it. And I think that that's a really good thing to remember. And then, yes, it can be hard. You have that, fear of missing out. You feel left out. But the choice, if he can be empowered in choosing on his own, praise God. And I want to, encourage you in that direction. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie here on Relevant Radio. We're going to come back answering another controversial question about a husband who's asking his wife to stay home with the kids, but she doesn't want to be a stay-at-home mom, never intended to. What can the teaching of the church help us in understanding this question? I'll be right back during a weekly marriage hour. The number is 1-888-914-9149. You can always direct message me on Instagram and ask your question as well. Are you tired of educational options that are a one-size-fits-all? Our sponsor, Colby Academy, offers the flexibility of both accredited, online, and traditional school-at-home options to fit the needs of your child. Visit relevantradio.com/Colby.
We're talking about what you're thinking about. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
It's our weekly marriage hour today on Trending. So many questions coming in. Numbers 1-888-914-9149. Also, we can take your question even if we don't get to it today on Instagram, and can direct message me at Timmerie. That's Timmerie. And who knows, you might see a cute baby photo or two, especially with the cousins together today. You can also email trending@relevantradio.com. Hey, Jerry from Nashville called. We were answering a question about whether or not you and your spouse will be together in heaven. Great question. I know it's very earth-shattering to find out. No, you won't be. And I just explained the teaching on that. And if you want to catch that, you can listen and subscribe to the podcast, relevantradio.com/trending, because it's a really important thing, I think, for us to understand what the role of marriage is and whether or not it occurs in heaven. It doesn't, but why? But there was a call from Jerry from Nashville. He said, when my mom was dying, I asked her late one night, will you look for me when you get to heaven? She said, no, I don't think so. He said he was crestfallen. She said that I think I'll be praising God so much I won't care anybody else is there or not. And I think that this is a very wise response. She saw how rich and profound that relationship with God will be, that she won't feel that desire or need. Will she wish that, is there that desire that everyone's with God in heaven, especially our children, our spouses, and our friends and family? Yes. But the need for that is not there in the same way. And I think that's something very profound we can understand, that we are complete in heaven with God. We do not have a desire or a need. That's why when we talk about faith, hope, and charity, those three theological virtues, we won't need hope anymore, because we won't need hope still, because we will have the fullness of hope, Jesus Christ. We won't need faith anymore, because our faith will be completed in the beatific vision of perfectly knowing God. The only virtue that will remain in heaven is charity itself. And so it's something for us to understand, that perfection of relationships will have that depth of understanding and love that is so necessary, that we strive for on earth, but will have in completion in heaven. Okay, very provocative question that I'd like to discuss today on Trending, because it's one that really hits close to home for so many people. We actually just did a show recently on this topic of whether or not you should be on a single income as spouses. Should husbands be the primary breadwinner? We're going to post a link to that show in the podcast notes for today's show. If you missed it, I think it was a great conversation. I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you have a thought or question. But I received an email from Catherine about being a working mom or not. She said, I'm married, the mother of 2 children, and also an orthopedic spine surgeon. She said, I had my kids in my mid-30s, and I spent many years training to become a physician. She said, my husband is successful in his own right, but he's not the primary breadwinner. She said, this has never been an issue between us, but recently he has asked me to put my career on hold until the kids graduate from high school. He says this is what God expects of me. She said, I have no interest in losing my skills or multiple medical licenses to stay home alone while our 2 kids are in school all day. She said, my field and many others, such as IT, change so quickly that putting your work, quote, on hold can be a death sentence to your career. She said, I never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and don't now. So my question is how to kindly tell him that after spending the majority of my life preparing to become an orthopedic surgeon, I see no reason to give that up. Ooh, this is a question. Okay, how much time do we have? I think about 8 minutes. Okay, so Katara, you're not going to like my answer. And I'm going to start with that because I think it's important, and I think that we have to convict our hearts always when we are butting up against topics where someone tries, and people can wrongly use this, this is what God wants. Is it what God wants? I think this is an opportunity to pray and ponder and dive a little deeper into some of the church's teaching. And a lot more could be said than what we say today, but just to start there, I want to encourage you to pray deeply about your husband's request and ask him questions. Ask him to explain more why this is important to him, why this is important as a person of faith. It's an opportunity for, as I always say, I think it's so important in marriage, communication, collaboration, and cooperation, being cooperative with one another. So let's start with kind of understanding a little bit of the structure of marriage, and then kind of this challenge and calling to come down to one income or to give up your career, this even wrapping your head around losing certifications and so forth. And I always want to speak first to what is so important, because people will say, well, look, Timmerie, you have a national radio show. I love what you're doing. I know a lot of people respect me for that. And some people say like, hey, you're a working mom. And yes, I do work. But let me tell you something. I bust my butt. I don't know if we can say that on Catholic radio, to try to work when my baby's asleep. I work so hard to really make sure that, I'm optimizing my time with my child. And it's hard. It's a tough balancing act. Or minimizing my time where I'm working so that I can spend a ton of time with my kid, meeting her needs. Because I know that our church is calling us as parents to be as present as possible to our kids. To raise our own kids and to be around enough to know when something's wrong. Some people will say, I spend great quality time with my kids. Quality time is great, but you need quality time and a lot of time. Because even parents who are stay-at-home moms, dads, you can be distracted all the time on your cell phone, social media, on the phone all the time. It's very easy, especially with family living so far away from each other, to constantly be trying to catch up or know what's happening in the world. So let's dive in, because I do want people to know, I try really hard to work when my kid's sleeping. And I really try to prioritize, my kid comes first. And I really do respect and kudos to Relevant Radio, because time and time again, whether it's my boss or whoever calls, if Penelope is having, or my baby is having a tough time, hey, I can call you back. That's okay. Is it perfect? Not always, but in terms of how we're able to make that function in my household with our baby. And I've said this time and time again, and I will say most likely when the time comes that doing this show gets in the way of being present to my kids and my husband, I will have to stop. And that's tough to make peace with. It's hard to recognize. A lot of I worked, I was a Pilates trainer. I danced my whole life, and Pilates has been a huge thing for me. I'm a certified Pilates trainer. I have worked with athletes, dancers, helped with people who've had hip, knee, shoulder replacements, you name it. And I love it. From teaching the fitness classes to working one-on-one rehabilitatively. It's fantastic. But when I found out I was pregnant, something had to give. Even when we got married, something had to give. I was working too much when we got married. We had to work as a couple, my husband and I, to decrease so that I could be present enough in the home to actually fulfill my wifely duties, both in, helping with cooking, helping with cleaning, keeping our home and making it a home. And that's a lot for us to swallow as women when we have talent and degrees and certifications and all of these different things. You want me to give up what? And sometimes our spouse asks us to give stuff up, or sometimes we see that the church is beckoning us as women to seemingly sacrifice a lot more than our husbands do. And it's easy to be offended. Well, what about my gifts? What about my effort and my work? I think this is part of the challenge where we overemphasize education in our culture for women. It is so important to be educated and to get degrees and, yes, contribute to society. But sometimes we're not telling the truth as people of faith about the calling of motherhood, about the calling of being a wife, and the sacrifices that demands. So let's talk briefly about the order of marriage and the challenge that we're being called to. Ephesians chapter 5, St. Paul speaks those verses of wives, be submissive to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Big mission for men to step up and literally die for their brides, and a big mission for women to have that level of submission. There is a church document called, an encyclical called Casti, Connubi, and it talks about this outward expression of love within the home and the proper ordering of love, and how spouses are meant to be advancing one another more and more in virtue. It talks about sacrificial love and the importance for a sacrificial love, and how ultimately that sacrificial love lived out within the context of marriage, and that reminding of one another of each other's missions is meant to ultimately imitate Christ and Christ's perfection, which he died on the cross, and he was bloody, he was bruised and beaten. That's a little bit what marriage should look like. And I know it's shocking that yes, it's love and it's fun, it's wonderful, but it is so sacrificial. And in Casti Connubi, it talks about how the man is the head of the home and the woman is the heart of the home. And as the husband occupies the chief place in ruling, so too the wife, the mother, ought to claim for herself the chief place in love. Now, Bishop Olmsted, in his Apostolic Exhortation to parents, gave a very, very strong challenge and nudge to Christian spouses. And I hope you'll listen to the podcast. We're going to post it in the podcast notes for today's show. Subscribe at relevantradio.com/trending. But his encouragement and beckoning is the encouragement for mothers to be home with their children when they're young, as they're being raised. He said, "Dear daughters in Christ, the worth, dignity, and genius inherent to you is irreplaceable in your family. Only you can offer the motherly love your children need." The feast day of St. Joseph is March 19th, a very special day in the church. In fact, it's a solemnity, which is one of the highest feast days of the year. This is Timmerie from Trending with Timmerie. Have you ever heard of the tradition of going to Joseph? That is ite ad Yosef. That is go to Joseph with your prayers, with your needs. We're going to talk about that on Trending, how to discern taking action the way St. Joseph did, and we'll walk through the litany of St. Joseph. So join me Friday at 6 p.m. Central on Relevant Radio or the Relevant Radio app.